Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for our show. We're going to be talking about the North Country new Green Deal Town Hall that's coming up just in a couple of weeks here. And in the studio I have with me Ginger Storey-Welch. Ginger is with a leader with the North Country 350 Alliance, and Toni Kennedy. Toni is a Potsdam Town Councilwoman, and the two of them have taken on the organization for this Green New Deal. So I'm happy to have you both in the studio. And Ginger, you're an old friend of the show. You've been here many times. So in 2018, the world's top scientists warned us that we only have 12 years to transform our economy to avoid catastrophic environmental breakdown within our lifetimes. The Sunrise Movement is using the Road to a Green New Deal Town Hall to give citizens all across the country an opportunity to hear from their neighbors about how the Green New Deal will improve their lives. So what we're going to do is talk about what we're going to be doing here in the Potsdam Town Hall on May 29th and how this fits into the larger Sunrises movement across the country as we begin to come together as citizens to talk about what we need to do to take care of our climate. Now, Ginger, just yesterday, quite literally yesterday, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere topped 415 parts per million, according to sensors at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii. So let's start out.
For the first time in human history.
That's right. Not just the planet's history. The planet's history, really.
Well, actually, we have had higher levels back in the Paleo-Eocene. We had higher levels.
That's been a while.
But that's been, like, we're talking about 50 million years ago.
Exactly. So give us a little bit about a background about the North Country 350 Alliance and what this 415 parts per million really means, because the 350 number is something that we shouldn't have gone above, and it's too late, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, North Country 350 Alliance is an affiliate of 350.org, which is an international organization working on climate change around the world. And we do local actions. So climate change is our, and I would refer to it as the climate crisis, is our main focus, preventing that. For myself, my own passion is nature. This morning I was out photographing wildflowers that are up and things like that. That's my passion. And the reason that I spend my time coming in and talking to you is because of that passion, because I'm really worried about losing those life species and things like that. You mentioned the 415 and the 350 numbers. 350 refers to the parts per million of CO2 that is considered by climate scientists to be the upper safe level of CO2 in the atmosphere. Prior to industrialization, we were around 280 parts per million. We exceeded 350 parts per million in the late 1980s, and since then we've been seeing growing problems with the climate. The number 415 is very chilling to me. I read Dr. Kurt Sager's book, Deep Future, a number of years ago, and he spoke of how if we go up into the 600s and the 700s and things like that, that it will literally take over 100,000 years to recover from that. So when they say it's irreversible, yeah, it's irreversible unless you want to look at it really, really, really long term.
Which is going to be far longer than any of us have to work on the problem, isn't it?
And you also mentioned the most recent SEC report where they mentioned the whole thing about 12 years. And I'd like to just clarify that because there's been some confusion on that. Some people have said that, if we don't do something within 12 years, everything is going to break loose. That's actually not true. Climate change is a delayed reaction. So the effects that we are witnessing today were actually baked in decades ago. So what we are actually doing is we have 12 years to prevent catastrophic effects happening happening a few
Okay.
decades later, like as you said, within our lifetime. But it doesn't mean that if we don't stop fossil fuels, that, you know, within 12 years, everything is going to fall apart. And it's important to understand that, because otherwise people will be ridiculing it. Saying, well, that didn't happen. And so it's important to understand that it's like saying we need to do something today to prevent that.
And that really is talking about the legacy that we leave our children and our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, isn't it? Because we have a responsibility to them, whether we want to maybe think about it or not, but everything that we do is going to have a downstream consequence. So we really need to think about what we're doing.
If I had one wish, it would be that every nation in the world abided by the Haudenosaunee seventh generation principle, which states all of our deliberations, in all of our deliberations, we should be considering the impact on the next 7 generations. If we did nothing more than that, there would be so much that would be resolved.
That's true. That's very true. So Toni, tell us what inspired you to step up to become a local organizer for the North Country Green New Deal that's going to be happening? Because these are all things that have happened in a very short period of time, haven't they, in terms of talking about creating these local town halls.
Well, I think we touched on it a little bit, that we're worried about future generations. I'm worried about how this climate crisis is going to affect not only my generations, but generations to come. I'm a mother to 2 young children, and I worry about the planet that we're leaving them, whether it's going to be habitable, whether they're going to be able to thrive. So that's kind of what has inspired me to get involved and really push for the Green New Deal. It's, you know, we've been warned by scientists all over the world that we have about a decade to act before we reach the point of irreparable damage in the future. So I really want to mobilize and make sure that the Green New Deal passes and that we get the word out. And it's really, the Green New Deal is really the only plan that addresses the climate crisis with the boldness and the seriousness that it requires.
Right, and as a town councilwoman, we would just have Rose Revesi in here talking about the town comprehensive plan that she's been working on for the last year and a half or so. And a big part of that is addressing the climate change issue through Potsdam, both the village and the town being climate smart communities. So this is really a good fit for a lot of the work that you're doing on the town council, isn't it?
It is. On the town board, I'm actually the climate smart communities coordinator for the state. So I'm on several of the committees for the climate smart communities task force. So it's definitely something that I'm working on as an elected official as well.
Well, that's good. So let's talk about what the Sunrise Movement is. Can you give us a sense of what that particular, and that is, again, it's a young person's movement, isn't it?
It's a young person's movement in the fact that the movement is led by young people, but it's a movement that is welcoming to all, because
it encourages these gray hairs.
Well,
Right.
because we understand that the climate crisis affects everybody in their own way. So younger people might be the generation that's most adversely affected, but we realize that everybody shares this planet together, so everyone's welcome to join into the movement.
Okay, good. And a lot of what the Sunrise Movement has taken over has been what is called the Green New Deal. So talk a little bit about what the Green New Deal is and what that entails, if you would.
Okay, so the Green New Deal is actually a 10-year plan to mobilize pretty much every sector of the American society. We want to meet the historic challenges that we're facing with the climate crisis, environmental degradation, and also combat economic injustice, racial injustices that are present within our society.
And of course, by using the New Deal language, it reminds us about how the country mobilized through the Great Depression, too.
Yes.
So it's using our own historical roots and the fact that when the country has been faced with really big challenges, it has always risen to the challenge. And we're not seeing the leadership, unfortunately, at the federal level for this particular challenge as we did back during the 1930s and the 1940s. But it doesn't mean that the grassroots isn't ready to step up, and that's exactly what this is, isn't it? It's a grassroots movement.
Well, actually, I mean, if the Green New Deal is passed, it would be the most transformative economic measure since the New Deal, the original New Deal from FDR, so.
Right, and it would not save not only the country, but it would save the planet, and that's a pretty good goal. So
Which saves us.
it saves us, exactly, right. So the Green New Deal has 5 main goals. Let's talk about what those goals are, because it's not the Green New Deal itself is not a hard and fast plan with a check mark, a bunch of check marks, is it? It's more like it's an encompassing idea about how you get started.
I think when people talk about the Green New Deal, they talk about it as if it is legislation. It's actually not a legislation, like you said, that goes bullet by bullet, this is the law. The Green New Deal that was introduced by Representative Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Markey in the Senate is more of a resolution for what we aim to do through legislation, and it will eventually craft the vision that we have for the Green New Deal and this sweeping economic transformation. So the first goal of the Green New Deal is obviously to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions through a fair and just transition. Everyday Americans that are working in the fossil fuel industry are not bad people. They're supporting their families, and so the Green New Deal does recognize that you have to allow for that just transition. That's why one of the big, actually the second goal is to create millions of good, high-paying jobs that will secure economic prosperity for all Americans.
So you're talking about retraining those people.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
And actually, we're seeing that happen at the global level with a lot of energy companies. They're actually embracing things like electric cars and things like that. They're starting to do some of that work of transforming, because they can see down the road too that there's a limit to how much they can continue to focus simply on oil and natural gas, and that they need to embrace some of these new opportunities, or they will eventually phase themselves out. And you see that all over the place. There are states that are setting, like New York, that has set a zero carbon goal, and you're seeing countries that are doing that too, and saying that by a certain date they will have only electric cars on the road. So there's a lot of technology that's starting to happen, and a lot of business opportunity around some of these new ideas, isn't there?
Yes.
There are a number of automotive companies who plan to be 100% electric in the near future.
That's right. So, and another thing that we have to do under the Green New Deal goals is transform our infrastructure, because in order to meet these goals, we're going to have to do things in a different way, aren't we?
Yes, that's actually one of the third main goals of the Green New Deal, is to invest in infrastructure and industry to sustainably meet the needs of the 21st century. So that's their third major goal.
And you know, one of the things that's going to entail is something, how do we pay for roads and bridges now? We pay it through a gas tax, but if you are not buying gas to run your electric car, then they're going to have to find a new way to finance those over the road use, aren't they? So it's going to be some real economic challenges, but also some opportunities to be more creative in how we finance things. So, and of course, everybody, one of the goals that we all have is to make sure that we have clean air and clean water.
That's the fourth one.
That's the fourth one. And one of the things that I talked about last show with Rose Revesi about the town plan is recognizing that they need to be, the town needs to be more resilient, and they need to figure out how to meet some of these. I think, Ginger, you like the word weather disruptions or climate disruptions that are coming down the road and that we're already facing. And how do we meet those? Not by using the same old tactics. Right?
A lot of the national conversation around the Green New Deal is the infamous question, how do you pay for it? The question I would like to challenge people with is, how do we pay for the damage that's going to be incurred by the weather destabilization? We're going to pay for the Green New Deal one way or the other, and we can pay for it after people have lost their homes, have possibly lost their lives, or we can pay for it now and prevent those catastrophes from occurring.
And what we're actually seeing is that the major insurance companies, this is a big issue right now. They get it because it's financially costing them a lot, and you're seeing places where you can't buy flood insurance anymore because you're on a flood zone, and you know.
There are two places that really totally get it, that are not, hippies kind of a sector. The insurance companies get it, and the military gets it.
Right.
The military gets it because they're going to be on the front lines when there's destabilization of cultures over this issue, and when the ocean is impeding on their bases, most of which are next to the ocean. You know, they get it totally if you read their reports.
Right, and it isn't just that, but it's also climate-driven migration, and that's something that a lot of the military establishments around the country are already dealing with to some extent. And people are not going to just sit there and drown. They're going to move, and they're going to push these borders.
No, and you're absolutely right. And along that line, when these people are refugees and fleeing situations, they're going to be hungry, they're going to be scared, they're going to need medical care. And that's a perfect opportunity for a terrorist organization to come in and say, you're hungry? We've got food for you. You need a job? I've got a job for you. And that's why the military refers to climate change as a threat multiplier.
That's right, that's right. And the fifth goal under the Green New Deal is to promote justice and equality, which is something that I think we always struggle with in this country. It's always easier to find somebody to hate than it is to find where you have common ground with people. So, and we know that a lot of these communities are going to be very vulnerable. They're going to be the first ones hit. So how do we prevent that? Just exactly what you've talked about with all this migration and stuff. How do we address these problems before they occur? And we're not going to do it by using the same old tactics, are we?
That's what I'm saying. We need to do this now to prevent that.
That's right, that's right. And the human suffering alone from this, let alone the financial burdens. And we've already seen that. In 2018, there were, I think, 10 different billion-dollar disasters that were weather-related in this country alone. And that's a lot of money. And that could be redirected with a little bit of thinking, couldn't it? So Toni, when and where is the North Country Green New Deal going to take place?
Okay, so the town hall is taking place on Wednesday, May 29th.
That's here in Potsdam.
That is here in Potsdam. It will be, the address is 18 Elm Street. If people are unfamiliar, it is the town hall. It's going to be the Potsdam Town Hall in the community room.
So the town hall is in the town hall.
Is in the town hall. See how we're very clever here.
That's right.
So we're going to open the doors hopefully about 5:45, give people time to settle, and we're hoping to start promptly at 6.
Okay.
We've booked the town hall till late in the night, and by late I mean 8, 9. That's late for a young mother with kids, so.
But when you get people together and they start talking about this, you don't want to kick them out of the doors right in the middle of a good community building exercise, do you?
Yes.
So
and that's May 29th.
That's May 29th, right. And so Ginger, North Country 350 is one of the co-sponsors of this event. Who are you hoping to attract to the town hall, and even more importantly, who should attend?
Everybody?
Oh, is the town hall, that could be a problem.
Only if you live on the planet.
Only if you, yes, no Martians, no. But more seriously, I would encourage people to come who perhaps question the Green New Deal. I would also encourage people who are concerned about the climate crisis, concerned about nature, but maybe feel like they don't do very as much, whatever. Come to find out what this is, come to find some hope, come to get some information, and
come to build community around this issue.
Yeah, because it will be community, and I'm absolutely convinced that this has to be a grassroots up kind of a movement to change, to create the change that we need. So one of the ways that the sponsors of this they have done this is they've done a really nice short video. It's called A Message from the Future, and I watched it last week. It's very cleverly done. We will put a copy. We'll put the link in our show notes so people can do it. But it's really designed to make you think about the future. It's designed to make you think about what you can do now, because there are things we can do, aren't there? There's a lot of things we can do. And to just go back to your question about who should attend, I would really strongly encourage young people to attend. because I sort of feel like we need this generation to stand up to our generation and say to those people who are obstructing, get out of the way, we're taking over.
Right.
Because it's her future. She's got 2 beautiful young children. For me, I have 7 grandchildren that I'm really concerned about, and they don't really get this in terms of, you know, how grave this can be in terms of their own future.
Yeah,
But
they don't get it yet.
No, they don't. And I'm working on how to address educating them on that without overwhelming them. But I think it's really important that these young people step up, because one thing that our politicians care about is votes. And when they start seeing that her generation cares about this so much, they're going to realize that if we don't start addressing this issue, we're going to lose the millennials, you know, vote. And that may wake some of them up.
I'm sure, and if it doesn't wake them up, it will at least change who is there at the table, and that's really important as well. And one of the things that that we've seen a lot of recently is as people who study voting patterns and people who come out to vote, is that this is the generation that is really putting the environment at the top of their concern list. And politicians and people who are candidate for offices who don't address this in a real way are really going to be losing those votes, because I always like to say that politicians don't lead, they follow. Mm-hmm. And as soon as the voters are send clear messages about what they care about, politicians run like heck to get out in front of them. So things like the Green New Deal are really an opportunity to say to candidates and politicians, we care about this, we're paying attention, and you better too.
Okay. We have young people who are suing the federal government.
That's right.
Over this issue, the Our Children's Trust, Juliana versus the U.S.
And that although the federal government has tried hard to get that suit thrown out, they haven't had any success, have they? So that's still
not
going
yet,
forward.
although there's a hearing on June 4th to see whether their appeal, and it's almost unheard of that a case is appealed before it's been tried, but which shows you how desperate they are.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a hearing on June 4th about that, so they're still trying, but so far, even 2 trips to the U.S. Supreme Court. So, you know, it's, to me, I'm banking on young people.
Right. Well, and you know, we really need to give them the resources that they need to do this. And one of the things that we've tried to do this spring on North Country Matters is really showcase some of these kinds of issues. We did the Green Living Fair. We had the monthly climate vigil folks come in and talk to us. A couple weeks ago, we did the food waste to energy program that's going on in Canton. Canton is also doing a food composting project. So we're seeing a lot of movement locally. People are really coming up with some great creative ways to begin to address some of these issues. And the climate smart community here in Potsdam and Canton are really leading the way, aren't they? Yes. So, and you're on that committee, so you've been seeing some of the energy that is being generated around this in terms of building community for change. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that you think are going to come out of this, the climate smart community process and the Green New Deal, that will really make a difference here in Potsdam?
Well, here in Potsdam, we're working on so many things. There's 3 separate committees for the Climate Smart Task Force. There is a committee that's solely dedicated to making Potsdam a resilient community, because we do know that these 100-year storms are now 10-year storms.
Or 5-year storms.
Or 5-year storms.
Yeah.
Exactly. So these changes are happening now. So we are really focusing on how do we make Potsdam resilient? How do we protect, you know, the citizens that live in Potsdam, their properties and things like that. So we're also working on, we have a community development committee that works on community outreach, education, as well as projects such as bringing electric vehicle chargers so that people can make that transition from gas to an electric vehicle. We're also working on how do we switch over street lights to LED lights, more efficient energies, making Pine Street Arena more efficient, capturing the energy wasted from the
the refrigeration
Yes,
part.
exactly. Thank you.
And, yeah, the refrigeration
Yes.
and turn that into heat that can be used in a different way.
Exactly.
Sure.
So we're focusing on lots of different projects, and then we also have a committee that's developed solely to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions all across the community. So.
And part of that, of course, is educating just everyday folks about what they can be doing in their
Yes.
own homes, as well as taking action at a municipal level on the things that you actually have direct control over. And so the Green New Deal is really a huge education opportunity, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So Ginger, you've been doing this work for a long time now, and
My whole life.
yeah, exactly. And as a teacher, you were teaching of these issues in your classroom probably long before they were the sort of things that that are quite as common as they are today.
Over
So
30 years for Earth Week.
yeah, there you go. So where do you see this effort going from here? Both based on your history as an educator, but also the work you're doing with the North Country 350 Alliance. Are you seeing some real momentum being generated these days around a lot of these issues?
I think it's getting to be where there used to be people who said that, climate change is happening, and people who said, no, the weather's always changing, everything. Those people are now saying, well, yes, climate change is happening, but there's still this feeling of, is it really by humans? Yes. And do we really need to take action? Yes. There are people that are moving in that direction slowly. Behind that, I see this movement of people that are stepping up and saying, get out of the way, we're going to take over. And I find that encouraging. At the same time, I will tell you that I'm not naive. People talk about stopping climate change. We are not going to stop climate change. We can slow it, we can avoid the worst effects, but one of the things that's really sobering to me is that back in the 1980s, if we had done what we should have done back in the 1980s and made all of the changes, switched from fossil fuels and da-da-da-da, and we're today like totally renewable, we would have actually continued to see all of the effects that we have seen up to date. Because these effects were baked in decades ago. And so we need to realize that the emissions from today have effects that are already baked in that we are not going to eliminate. And that's why we're talking about avoiding the worst effects down the road. We just must. It's crucial. We've recently had the new UN report that came out on biodiversity and ecosystem services. 300 experts from around the world, 1,500-page report that is saying that as we are going today, we are facing the extinction of 1 million species. The pollinators terrifies me. They said in this report that we could be looking at a loss of $600 billion worth of agricultural production lost if we lose the pollinators. It's like 75% of the crops require pollinators, and the population of insects is crashing. So we don't have a lot of wiggle room. We really do need to be serious about it this time and not say, well, down the road. No, now.
And you make a good point there, talking about the how the insurance companies get it. When you use those kinds of numbers about this is what the economic loss is going to be, that in this country is something that does provide a wake-up call, doesn't it? So by putting these kinds of numbers on it, financial numbers on it, it may be making believers out of some of the people who've been trying to pretend that none of this matters. And I think your point, Toni, about the town looking at increasing resiliency, that's something that we all have to do. Because the truth is that just as we learned during the ice storm, these events are very broad-based. They take in huge, vast areas, and there's nobody who can come and save you if everybody in the areas around you is also being affected. You have to figure out how to be resilient and to be able to create your own solutions. And by thinking about them ahead of the crisis, that's really the key. The key,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely the key. So, as we wrap up, what's your last final message to people about coming out on the 29th and being ready to go from the 29th to wherever the next step takes us, which hopefully we will come together as a community and create some of those next steps.
Okay. Well, my final thought is just, I think most people are aware of the partisan divisiveness that we are experiencing as a country. But for me, I see the Green New Deal as a chance to bring our society back together around, a great national aim of rebuilding and restructuring our economy. We need to have a forward-looking society based around opportunity, justice, prosperity, environmental protections. So I think we should all just join the movement and attend the town hall on May 29th at 6 o'clock in the town hall.
Ginger, your final thoughts?
Just that it matters, please come.
Yes, that sounds good. Well, thank you both for coming in. I'm glad we were able to schedule this. We only have a fairly short period of time between now and that event, but there'll be lots of publicity, and hopefully this will help to inspire folks to come out. So thank you both.
Yes,
very
thanks for
much.
having us.
Yes.
These conversations are a production of North Country Matters, which is filmed here in the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center of the Potsdam Public Library. These shows are a civic collaboration between the League of Women Voters of St. Lawrence County and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters, and so does the Green New Deal. So thank you both for coming.